Hey, what's up everybody? In this video, I'm going to review Grim and also share with you how I use him. Grim is from the Twisted Wonderland series, and right now it is lucky time, so the drop rates for Grim is going to be identical to Kalam al-Asim. Grim is a really fun and exciting Tsum to use, so let's get into it and take a look. The ability description for Grim is canned tuna and high scoring Grim Tsums appear for a short while. And just to elaborate on that a little bit, they don't just randomly show up. What ends up actually happening is that one specific type of Tsum on the screen will turn into canned tunas. So in this case for me, you'll see in Monsters University Mike got turned into canned tunas, and then after that you'll be able to connect those canned tunas with Grim as well. So before we talk about the ability, let's take a look at the stats. To activate Grim's ability, you're going to need to clear anywhere between 18 to 21 copies of Grim off the screen. This number will depend on what your skill level is, and we'll go over the skill chart a little bit later. His minimum score is 80 with a maximum score of 864. So the base score isn't necessarily that impressive, but do keep in mind that during the ability time, the canned tuna and Grim will be boosted for scoring. And if you would like to get this Tsum to skill level 6, you're going to need to get a total of 32 copies of him from the premium box or using skill tickets. Okay, so let's take a look at the skill chart down on the bottom right hand corner there. So every single time you level up Grim, two things changes. Well, not every single time, they alternate. Going from skill level 1 to skill level 2, it's going to require one less Tsum to activate the ability. It goes from 21 to 20. But when you go from skill level 2 to skill level 3, the ability time increases from 3.5 to 4.7, and that actually makes a huge difference. The ability time, the Tsums required also plays into a factor once you get to a higher skill level, but they kind of alternate there, the amount of Tsums that's required to activate the ability, and also the ability time, how long that's going to last. And before I go any further, if you guys are enjoying this type of content where I review Tsums, do monthly leaks, go over the selection boxes and pickup capsules, or just want to support this channel in general, please consider subscribing to this channel. I also have a Discord server, so if you need help with the game or just need friends to send you hearts, consider scanning this QR code on the screen or using the link in the description below to join our Discord server. We're also planning to have regular events to spice up the game, so come join us on our Discord server. Okay, so back to Grim. And let's take a look at the lower skill levels at skill level 1, 2, and 3 first, and then we'll go over skill level 4, 5, and 6 next. So when you're using Grim, the strategy does shift from the lower skill level to the higher skill level. When you're using the lower skill level, one thing you should do is you want to make long chains as much as possible, and ideally you want to go directly across the screen. So whether that's like straight across or diagonal, you want to make a straight line if possible versus going in a circle. By making a long line, you're going to cover more surface area when you're using Grim, because keep in mind, Grim's ability does clear surrounding Tsums as well. And another strategy when you're using Grim is you want to burst magic bubbles right after the ability time. And the reason for that is you want to use those bubbles to try to get yourself back either into fever time or into ability. This becomes more important at the higher skill level, but for the lower skill level, you're probably going to be generating 2 to 3 bubbles at skill level 1, 2, and 3. Now this might be obvious, but I just want to state it just in case. During the ability time, you really want to focus on clearing the canned tunas and Grim, because if you clear any other Tsums there, they're not going to burst surrounding Tsum, so you definitely want to focus on Grim and the canned tunas as much as possible. And if you look at how the abilities are activated, there is a slight pause there. Once you activate the ability, the game kind of tells you where the canned tunas and Grims are, so in those moments they will flash white. Try to in your head plan out where you're going to clear these Grims and the canned tunas. Now, I've been playing Grim for a little bit now after I recorded these videos, and I found it very helpful to go from side to side. So what I mean by that is once you activate the ability and you made a chain on the right hand side of the screen, so connecting Grim with the tunas, you then shift your focus to the left side. So you want to alternate sides going from left to right, either top to bottom, but essentially you want to go from one end to the other. And the reason for that is when you do that, you'll have areas where it doesn't move a lot because it gives it time for the game to drop the rest of the Tsums. Now let me show you guys a side-by-side comparison of the abilities activated at the same time. So one thing I'm going to do differently here is I'm not going to pause the gameplays, because pausing it for this Tsum, it doesn't make sense. But what I will do instead is I will slow it down and talk to you what's actually happening and what improvements I've made since I did these recordings. All of these recordings were my first attempts using at these skill levels, so I didn't perfect them. So as you saw there at skill level 3, I burst a bubble. You definitely want to avoid that. You want to really focus on clearing Grims and the Cantunas. So earlier I mentioned that the game will flash white on the Cantunas and Grim, and you'll see that at the very beginning. So first it will tell you where all the Cantunas are, and then all the Grims will show up. So while that flashes on your screen on where all the Cantunas are and where all the Grims are, you want to start planning your chains. Either you want to make a really long chain or make spots of really small chains. And also keep in mind, once you create those chains and your ability time is over, you want to start bursting those bubbles as well. And if you're struggling with making a long chain, that's okay. Even if you make a chain of 3, because it's going to burst surrounding bubbles, it's going to burst 9 to 10, and that's actually the sweet spot for a time bubble. So that's okay. Don't feel like you always have to make a really long chain, because a small chain is better than no chain at all. Moving on to the higher skill level for skill level 4, 5, and 6. And the strategy is going to shift at these higher skill level, and that's because it's going to require less zooms to activate the ability, and you're going to get more time during the ability time, so your strategy will shift. So at these higher skill level, it's kind of the opposite of what you want to do at the lower skill level. What you should do at these higher skill level, especially for skill level 6, is you want to connect actually shorter chains instead of longer chains. And the reason behind that is because when you connect shorter chains, it takes less time, and you're going to be able to generate more magic bubbles. And the second factor plays into this, where it requires less zooms to activate the ability, because the more bubbles on the screen, it's going to allow you to burst those bubbles right after the ability time, getting you back into ability time. So the idea here is at skill level 6, you want to be able to activate as many abilities per game, even if it means that you're going to make shorter chains, but you're going to get more bubbles to keep you in fever time as well as in ability time. So making those bubbles are pretty important. And like I mentioned, for skill level 1, even if you make shorter chains and only get a chain of 3, you're going to be in that sweet spot of making a time bubble. So if you make a time bubble, you're going to extend the game, getting more time and getting more coins per game. So that's the strategy here. So like you see here at skill level 5, I do have a lot of time bubbles on the screen. So don't feel like you always have to make a really long chain for these higher skill level. If you can, that's great, but the shorter chains work just as well at these higher skill level. And because ability time lasts longer, you'll be able to create more bubbles per game. But it is important that you burst those bubbles right after ability time, because you don't want to have too many bubbles stacked up where you can't make chains for the next ability time. So let's take a look at the abilities activated at the same time at these higher skill level. You'll notice here that the ability lasts a lot longer at these higher skill level, comparing it especially for skill level 1, but even skill level 5 and 6, they do take a lot of time for it to run through. So if you look at it here, just similar to the lower skill level, you want to focus at the very beginning on where the Cantunas and where the Grims are. And then in your head, you should start planning where you want to make the chains. And then secondly, like I mentioned, you want to go from side to side. You want to go from right to left or bottom to top. Either way, you just pick a side and then follow the other way. It does get a little bit more difficult as you create those chains though, because the bubbles do get in the way regardless, especially for skill level 6, because you will generate a lot of bubbles per ability. And then after that, just burst all those magic bubbles to try to get yourself back into ability time, and then just recycle that process until time runs out essentially. As you can see, Grim is not necessarily the easiest zoom to use. You will need to plan a little bit on where you want to make the chains and also play kind of fast. If you're not successful in both of those areas, you're not likely going to be able to maximize Grim. I'm not saying that I was able to maximize it either, because these gameplays, as you can see, they're not necessarily the most optimized. I did play some games after I recorded these, and I was able to improve on my coin earnings and also my score as well, but they do need some practicing. So if you have Grim and you feel like you cannot get these results, you will need to just practice a little bit and figure out what style works best for you, whether if it's making long chains or shorter chains. But I do personally like the shorter chains because they do generate those bubbles, which is very helpful. Alright, so let me show you the results for all 6 of these gameplays. At skill level 1, I ended up with 2.7 million points and only 1,252 coins, so not that impressive. It doesn't get impressive, or quote unquote impressive, until skill level 5, and that's really where the score comes in. I got 9.1 million, but for coins, I only got 3,053 coins, which is not that amazing for a skill level 5 zoom. And there's not a huge improvement once you get to skill level 6 either. I got 11 million points and only 3,560 coins. It's nice, but not that amazing, especially for a skill level 6 Tsum. So if you have Grim, I would say just keep him at skill level 1 or get him to skill level 3 because he's a very fun Tsum to use and can make a long chain. But other than that, Grim is not going to be a good corn earner like I hoped he would be. However, he is a really fun Tsum to use. I do like the animation as well, and I think the canned tuna is really fun to see on the screen. But I know a lot of you care a lot about the coins, so Grim is not going to be a great corn earner. So that's my review of Grim, and I hope that you guys found this video helpful or at least entertaining. And if you guys would like to see more Tsum Tsum content just like this or want to support this channel, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, thank you so much for watching.